Got questions about spiritual life, relationships, inner peace, or navigating everyday challenges with grace? Welcome to Ask A Swami, a Q&A series where you ask and Swamis from Yasodhara Ashram share their insights and experiences. In this episode, I speak with Swami Lalitananda, spiritual director of the ashram, about being a disciple.
Murali Krishna, Mukunda Krishna, Mohana Krishna, Krishna Krishna.
Hello, Swami Lalitananda, and welcome to Ask A Swami.
Namaste, Katie.
Namaste. Let's get right into it today. Our first question is, Dear Swami, what does it mean to be a disciple to you?
This is a very good question. I often think of disciple as discipline. For example, I have chosen the discipline of yoga as my study, where perhaps you have chosen anthropology as your field of study. But it's similar in the sense that it is a field of study, and when you enter into it, you become more concentrated and knowledgeable about that field. And your knowledge is knowledge that has been passed on from those who have come before. And so in a relationship like a guru-disciple relationship, which is how I understand disciple as relating to myself, I have a teacher who has passed on teachings that I can immerse myself into. And also as a disciple, I had a personal relationship with Swami Radha, who was my teacher and who is my teacher still, through her teachings. But through the personal relationship, I got to have an example of someone who was walking the path with integrity. So she was a disciple as well as being a guru. She was a disciple of Swami Shivananda. And this is how a lineage forms and how the river starts to flow, because teachings are passed from guru to disciple. And so as a disciple, one of the main things is to be receptive and connected and really listening and wanting the teachings. And usually that comes, it did for me, because I was in a place of not knowing and I wanted to know. I wanted a way. I wanted to find out what my life was supposed to be about. I mean, my very first understanding of disciple came from Sunday school. I just have to say that Jesus had disciples, and in our little booklets, they were always shown following him, and they were questioning. They didn't really know, but they wanted to know. And then they were trying to learn and understand, and sometimes they really didn't get it. And I kind of feel that is like being a disciple. You're trying, you want to understand, and there's someone who has more knowledge and you want to soak it up. But sometimes as a disciple, you kind of fail too. Like you're imperfect, even as your teacher is also imperfect, and yet able to transmit something that's very powerful. So a disciple is a human being, for sure, with human failings, but the ability and desire to learn. That was my way anyway. I mean, I never thought that I want to grow up and be a disciple. It just never crossed my mind. It wasn't in my scope. And I feel like the yogic field is a field of practice. And what's really important is not necessarily having the person as the teacher, but the wisdom within being ignited and stimulated, so that that open-ended questioning and quest for understanding, for higher understanding, for something more subtle than just the everyday, that desire for the divine, you could call it, the desire for union, which is what yoga means, union. We want to be able to understand our human self, but also connect with the higher or more inner sacred place. And we call that different things depending on our tradition, but it's recognizable in every tradition that there is somewhere to go.
That link that you made between discipline and disciple feels really important. And in that, when I hear discipline, I think, well, self-discipline and a level of commitment. So in your experience, how has discipline played a role in you being a disciple and your relationship with these teachings and Swami Radha?
I feel like I was a very undisciplined person up until I came upon this path, really. I mean, I had inklings of yoga. I had done hatha yoga. I had read books. But it wasn't until I really entered this path that I developed discipline. And my discipline was based on wanting to know and that heart longing. So I felt quite connected to mantras. And so I started off chanting. And it was a discipline in the sense that I would do it every morning for a certain length of time. And I would do the Divine Light Invocation. And I think discipline has a bad name. It's really, at least it did for me at the time, but what it did was help me create a new pattern for my mind. So the more I did the practice, the more it would seem like it was a narrowing, which was something I hadn't wanted in my life. I didn't want to narrow. But with the narrowing came the concentration, which actually opened to something bigger and wider. So discipline is like directing energy. And so I had a different place to go besides just the worry or the circles of the mind. And that was so helpful for me. And I still find, I still do my practices and it's a discipline, but it's so rewarding. And what I do is I change the practices sometimes so it doesn't just become routine. So sometimes I'll really focus on the light. Sometimes I'll really feel the love of Divine Mother. Other times I just want to do like an intense concentration practice. And like the tiny dot of light moving up the spine and lighting up the brain. Every one of them is so powerful. And so I continue to be fascinated by what can open and what each practice can do. So I don't have Swami Radha in person, but I have these teachings that are still very alive and which I get to pass on to other people.
I appreciate your discussion about being open with the practices and what you said about it not becoming a routine, but you having the flexibility to change. And that's something I've struggled with in terms of discipline and wanting to be very directed and focused, and then wondering like what balance is required to also be easy with myself, with that human self. And so how has balance been a part of that for you in terms of daily life and spiritual life, being disciplined and being open?
I'm more on the open side, maybe unlike you, who's more on the discipline side. So I'm really happy to be intuitive and to kind of follow the flow. But the human and the disciplined or the divine part, those are always going to be there. And I feel like part of the discipline is the keeping on learning, admitting mistakes, and really accepting the human, and not, because as a Swami, people do things like ask a Swami because they will know, right? So there's this projection onto us as if we're super people. But really all we are people who have recognized their path and made a commitment to it and continue to be very, very human. So I just want to create space in my life for the divine to enter. And that's why I do the practice, not just for the sake of practice. I want to feel that connection. I want to know it's there. You know, life is so mystical. People are born and they die. They have all kinds of traumas. So what is it really about? And to find that quiet space where I can just kind of relax my whole system, my nervous system, my body, my mind, and be in a more open, receptive space that just allows things to be. I feel it's necessary not only for me, but for everyone right now. Like it's good to have that inner refuge.
That invitation to stay open and sort of go with the flow feels very inspiring for me. So thank you for that. And I think especially in this time in the world, it's needed for people to listen to what's happening and to listen to what's needed for them rather than following a really strict path that we're bound to as humans, like you said, to fail on. And that sort of leads me to my next question, and that is connected to devotion. Someone asks, Dear Swami, how is devotion important and how has it been a part of your life?
I think devotion came into my life when life was starting to fall apart and I needed a higher source and I needed to open my heart to something that would help me because mental acrobatics themselves would not do it. It was time to feel what I was feeling and find a way to open to feelings of love that weren't necessarily attached to a person, but to, I don't know, it was like an elevated feeling. I needed to express something like that. So I tried a couple of things in my semi-broken state because it was after a failed relationship. And so that brokenness needed healing. And eventually it led me to the door opening to this tradition. And I really liked the combination of the intellectual, but it wasn't truly intellectual. It's more like the self-investigation, that deep questioning, along with a devotional aspect that was like a holding. It was like, yeah, you can ask hard questions, you can look at your life, but I'm still holding you. So I related to the heart, the bhakti, that feeling of wanting to love the divine and accept the love of the divine. And mainly through voice, through chanting, through that longing expressed through the voice and through the prayers and things. So there is that devotion. And when I look back at my life too, I saw that just in a more generic sense, I've always been devoted to learning. And not like I didn't have to try. It's just like I really wanted to read when I was really young. I really wanted to learn. So that's been a thread. It just took different winding routes. So sometimes it was experimenting as a young person with travel or relationship and so on. Like, how can I learn from this? And then like, oh, whoa, that was hard. Let's try this. And so, yeah, I think it's devotion to this path, to this line of teachings, to what I've learned from Swami Radha. It's also devotion to passing it on. It seems very important to keep that river flowing. I think of the lineage like a river. It doesn't want to get dammed up. It wants to keep going, right? So even though Swami Radha is not here, Gurudev Shivananda is not here, that river still flows.
So it sounds like the devotion showed up in your first kind of entry into the teachings, what you mentioned as coming from maybe a broken place, a place that needed healing. And now it exists devotion to continuing this tradition and this lineage and passing on the teachings. So the question that arises for me is, what form and what potential does devotion have, particularly for young people who might be entering into this tradition and sort of preparing to perhaps hold the teachings?
I think everyone's very unique, and we have different mantras that appeal to different people. So I wasn't particularly involved in like a deity per se. We always had taras, which are from the Tibetan tradition. But my mantra was always Hari Om, because for me it was so beautiful. The sound of it was so beautiful. So I really entered the devotion through sound more than through image, I think. And so different people will have different ways, different young people as well. And devotion isn't necessarily the way for anyone. You can enter through the intellect, through Jnana Yoga, through philosophy, through action, through Karma Yoga. But devotion, even like, for example, in Karma Yoga, if you do it with devotion, like the Bhagavad Gita says, then you come closer to the divine more quickly because it becomes an offering. So yeah, I think everyone has to find their own way, and I wouldn't prescribe devotion to anyone in particular. It's just some people have that kind of softness of heart and they need to have a channel for it and express it. And so this is such a good way. And also, like something like chanting helps us elevate our emotions. which can be really necessary to use our voice to express things that might be like stuck or churning, and then turning it over. So it doesn't have to be, I'm turning it over to this aspect of God, but if that works for you, great. If you like to develop that relationship, it is a powerful and interesting way. Swami Radha used to say, you can grow flowers for the divine, you can grow blue flowers for Krishna, many different colors for Divine Mother, white for Shiva. Yeah. So there's different ways of expressing devotion.
And what comes to my mind when I think of the word devotion is that aspect of being devoted to something. Mm-hmm. And even the potential to be devoted to these teachings, to a certain practice, or even devoted to one's own self-development.
Yeah, that's a good way to use devotion. It doesn't have to be spiritual or religious devotion. It can be a direction of energy. I want to know, and you're devoted to that, and I want to know more. The same as a discipline. Mm-hmm. I want to know more about anthropology. Who were these people? What did they learn? What did they learn about people? Or spiritual life. What did they learn about the divine? How did they get closer? What does it mean to be enlightened? I want to know. I'm devoted to finding out. Mm-hmm. I want to get there. So that's what Swami Radha would say to me. If you really want to get there, you will. She didn't say where it was, though. But I could see that she had gone somewhere.
If you really want to get there, you will.
Yeah.
Well, that's very inspiring for me. And it is my hope that whoever's listening has drawn inspiration from this conversation as well. I'm so grateful that you have sat down to talk with me about being a disciple, disciplined, and devotion. And I'm truly grateful. Namaste.
Namaste. Thank you for the opportunity.
My pleasure.
Namaste.
Yasodhara Ashram is located in British Columbia on the unceded traditional territory of the Ktunaxa and Sinixt peoples. If you have questions that need answers, you can submit them to the form link in the description. You can learn more about the ashram and Swami Shivananda Radha's teachings by visiting our website at yasodhara.org.